Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizengausen. It's May 5th, and here's the top news as of this minute. Some very interesting additional information has emerged about that drone that reached central Moscow yesterday, which the Russians used electronic warfare to crash into a building on Mosfilmovskaya Street, just 6 kilometers from the Kremlin. As it turns out, this FPV-1 drone bypassed 3 layers of Moscow's defenses and 101 air defense positions. Dozens of S-400 systems, over 80 Panzer and Tor systems, special rooftop positions in the city center, and towers specifically built along roads to intercept drones. The drone bypassed all of these positions. Furthermore, all these positions have already been mapped and thoroughly studied. Well, Putin has found himself in a very awkward position. I'd even say he's been backed into a corner. So in his typical fashion, what did Putin do? He issued an ultimatum for a ceasefire. I'm declaring a ceasefire for May 9th. Well, so that nothing would come flying in. But Ukraine basically told Putin where to go and made a counter-proposal, one that leaves Putin with no good moves left. I'll read Volodymyr Zelensky's statement. To date, there has not been a single official request to Ukraine regarding a format for the cessation of hostilities. We believe that human life is of incomparably greater value than the celebration of any anniversary. In this regard, we are declaring a period of silence, starting at midnight on the night of May 5th to 6th. Meaning this period of silence is supposed to take effect tonight. And he added, we will act reciprocally, starting from the specified moment. It is time for the Russian leadership to take real steps to end the war. If the Russian Ministry of Defense believes it cannot hold a parade in Moscow without Ukraine's goodwill, oh, how unpleasant this must be for Putin right now. Essentially, right before the eyes of the whole world, Ukraine just rubbed Putin's nose in it like this. First of all, that balding piece of trash isn't going to dictate to Ukraine. Usually Russia was the one imposing the agenda. We are declaring a ceasefire for certain dates, so you'd better follow it. Remember the gesture of goodwill, those humanitarian pauses? We've been through all that. Secondly, this is such a diplomatic and military slap in the face to the Kremlin. So, if Russia agrees to this ceasefire and they have no other choice, they really don't. I mean, if Russia agrees, they're effectively admitting that the parade's safety depends on Ukraine. Ukraine is capable of influencing the situation even in Moscow itself, and most importantly, Kiev is dictating the terms of the moment. Well, for the domestic audience in the Russian Federation, this is just a catastrophe. The myth of total control, of being a great power, is crumbling. It's just falling apart before their eyes. So what about Putin's words then? Everything is going according to plan. All goals will be met. Everything is under control. If even the capital of Russia is not under control, if Russia does not agree, well, then May 9th is a risk zone. Then everything that needs to will fly, just like that one drone bypassed. The 100 air defense positions and dozens of others will too. Well, a bit later I'll show you footage of how today our Flamingo missiles simply demolished a Russian factory, and they arrive much faster than drones. Moreover, Russia must officially agree to these terms. This is a double humiliation for them. Who was saying that Ukraine has no cards in its hand? Well, now we'll see. Well, the Russian Ministry of Defense has already stated that it will strike Kyiv with missiles if they aren't allowed to hold the parade. But they do this all the time. Constantly. They've already done this dozens of times, hitting Kyiv with missiles. But they haven't hit Moscow with missiles yet. It will be interesting to see how they'll shoot down missiles over Moscow. But more on that a bit later. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important for the channel's promotion. We're fighting Putin's propaganda here. Let's do it together, so be sure to subscribe. And I think everyone understood what happened. Putin is worried about his pathetic parade, but mostly for himself, declaring a truce for the duration of the parade. Ukraine says, yeah, right, like you're going to tell us. So Putin, if in his thug-like manner, he claims Ukraine won't dictate terms to him, he'll just get hit hard. But if he agrees, how's that? It's his inner circle. Street rules. How can that be? If Putin agrees to Ukraine's terms, he'll be a pushover to his own. So they put the Botox jellyfish on a string, stretched him out in a split. The parade, by the way, which for many years in Russia was a symbol of strength, power, and greatness, meant to strike fear into neighbors, has turned into a symbol of humiliation and helplessness. Well, so that Russians wouldn't be bored, at night there was a strike on a key strategic facility of the Russian military-industrial complex, the Joint Stock Company, VNIAR Progress in Cheboksary. It's reported that this factory was attacked by a Flamingo missile. It definitely wasn't a drone. Let's watch the video. Just like that, before they could even blink, and part of the factory, an important factory, is gone. And I'll remind you, this is almost 1,000 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. This factory is responsible for the production of Cometa navigation modules, which have interference protection. Well, essentially, they make jam-resistant antennas there for Shaheds and more, or used to make. I guess that would be more accurate to say. And another very interesting point, in the video, I think you heard the sound of the air raid siren. I mean, the air raid siren just went off, and then a missile strikes. This is a very blunt and probably the final hint to everyone working at this plant and other Russian plants involved in the Russian military-industrial complex. Ukraine has these kinds of strike capabilities. You saw that you won't even have time to run out of the missile and drone assembly shop. You just won't. So think about that and change your job while you still can. And this morning, by the way, they added drones to this plant's troubles. Let's watch the video. So 1,000 kilometers is not the limit, but there'll be more news in a bit. Today is just a day of some kind of records. By the way, regarding the parade, apparently the Chinese leader Xi Jinping will not be attending the parade in Moscow this time. Clearly, it's too much honor for the Kremlin's vassal, so he won't be acting as a protective umbrella or air defense system this year. And here's more proof that everything is going according to plan. Here is that very record. For the first time in Russia, a missile threat was announced today at a distance of, listen to this, 2,500 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. According to Russian media, during the night, last night, a missile threat was declared in at least 17 regions of Russia. It was announced for the first time in the Khanty-Mansi Autonomous Okrug. The head of the region, Ruslan Kukarchuk, wrote about this. In short, 2,500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border is 800 kilometers further than Yekaterinburg, meaning it's already beyond the Urals, way out there. A missile threat, not a drone threat, a missile one. But that's not all. In the Leningrad region today, the Kirishi refinery was hit, the second most powerful refinery in Russia after Omsk. It's a huge place, like a real city, one of the key ones in the country. Its design capacity is 20 million tons of oil refining per year. So this is very serious. And we have this video too. Judging by the footage, this might not have been a drone either. Take a look. What's with the face, Putin? And at the front, Ukrainian warriors have stopped the Russian offensive. They are performing a true feat. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. Today, we continue the fundraiser for EW electronic warfare equipment for the UAV battalion of the 42nd Separate Mechanized Brigade, which is holding the line in the Donetsk direction. The soldiers recorded a video message for you. Please take a look.
Вітаємо, друзі! Ми бійці батальйону безпілотних систем Перун 42-ї окремої механізованої бригади. Зараз працюємо на одному із найтяжчих напрямків, а це Покровський. Звертаємось до усіх глядачів каналу Бориса Ізенгаузена за підтримкою нашого збору. А нам потрібен реп. Для чого нам реп? Щоб наші автомобілі не ставали ось такими і щоб наше життя завжди було під куполом. Разом до перемоги! Слава Україні! Героям слава!
Let's help our fighters. Electronic warfare equipment is what brings down Russian drones. In this case, your donation directly saves someone's life. The link for donation details is in the description of this video. Putin is seriously concerned about the risk of a conspiracy or a coup, especially a possible assassination attempt using drones by part of the Russian elite. This is stated in a European intelligence report that reached Western media today. Well, we understand that he's seriously worried, having dug himself tunnels. Moreover, Putin is concerned not only about a possible assassination, but also that a coup d'etat might happen. CNN is already writing about this. The Kremlin fears a coup involving, who would you think, Shoigu? Fears of a military coup or conspiracy against Putin have intensified in the Kremlin, CNN reports, citing a report from a European intelligence agency. According to intelligence, the Kremlin fears that Sergey Shoigu, the former defense minister of the Russian Federation and once one of the officials closest to Putin, could organize such a coup. And it's claimed that Shoigu, who is currently the secretary of the Security Council, maintains significant influence over the army's top command. This is what Putin fears. After Shoigu's resignation as defense minister, a wave of purges began, and officials closest to him to Shoigu faced criminal prosecution and asset seizures. In short, there was a whole series of them. And not just Shoigu, that is Surkov, Surovikin, who else fell out of favor? Prigozhin and Utkin, those were eliminated altogether. Gherkin is sitting in prison. Ivanov, Shoigu's associate as well. Due to the fear of a coup, the Kremlin has apparently tightened Putin's security and reduced his visits. Putin spends most of his time in protected bunkers, and additional surveillance cameras have been installed in the homes of his inner circle. The staff at Putin's residences, cooks, guards, photographers, were banned from using public transport, as if they ever used it, and from using phones with internet access. Oh, that scary internet. Putin is afraid that something will happen to him there. Putin's visitors are now checked sometimes twice, and sometimes even more. So there. For decades, Putin built his power on a balance between clans, between the Siloviki, bandits, oligarchs, and technocrats. Everyone always knew the rules. Loyalty guarantees immunity. It was such an unspoken social contract within the Russian elites. But the war destroyed this contract. That is, when the arrests of people from Shoigu's inner circle began, and Shoigu himself was one of the pillars of the system, it became a signal. The rules no longer work, and no one is protected. And a person who has nothing to lose becomes quite unpredictable. This is exactly what Putin fears, but he can't do anything about it. You're scared, you little underground creep. Be afraid, soon your own people will strangle you. Well, Putin probably hasn't recovered from Prigozhin's mutiny yet. Remember how terrified he looked? And now there are new fears. And Putin is always comparing himself to Peter the Great, to Catherine, as a sort of gatherer of Russian lands. But he should read history more carefully. There's a direct analogy here with Paul I. I mean, the final years of Paul I's reign are just a classic case. It's exactly like Putin now. Paul I stopped trusting the nobility and officers, started massive reshuffles, punishments, many fell into disgrace. He began making unpredictable decisions. Well, basically the same thing Putin is doing now. He isolated himself in St. Michael's Castle, so it was like a fortress for his own people. Not a bunker, of course, but Paul built this St. Michael's Castle on the site of the Summer Palace, surrounded by moats, bastions, and drawbridges. Putin in our time has gone underground because the weapons are a bit different. So Putin is our underground conqueror here. In the end, what happened to Paul? A conspiracy formed not from below. Paul feared a conspiracy among the people, but from above, within the elite, among his closest associates. In the end, the conspiracy was led by the one Paul trusted most, Count Peter von der Pahlen, the military governor of St. Petersburg. He was a real buddy of Paul I, like Patrushev probably, or Sechin. And it all ended, of course, with the event known as the assassination of Paul I. There are even paintings on this subject. The most interesting thing is that for the conspiracy to eliminate Paul I, it only took 12 people. And when they went in, to get rid of Paul, some were even drunk. They burst right into Paul's bedroom. He hid behind the fireplace there. They found him. First, they hit him with a snuff box, a golden one at that, on the temple, and then they strangled him with an officer's scarf. And it's precisely because of this analogy that people often wish for Putin to meet a snuff box. The official version of Paul I's death, by the way, was an apoplectic stroke, a stroke. St. Petersburg, of course, didn't believe it then, and they joked it was an apoplectic stroke by a snuff box to the temple. So listen, Putin, just read some history. And I'm still curious whose snuff box it will be this time. And so Putin has developed a terrible paranoia. And there are plenty of well-wishers, by the way, ready to smack him with a snuff box on his balding head, including those in his inner circle. So he's paranoid. Another interesting news. Vikiom didn't publish Putin's weekly rating after the sharpest drop in 8 years. I mean, they've been publishing this rating every week. Over the last few months, Putin's rating has been falling. And I'll remind you that VCOM is also not an independent organization at all, which is clear since even inflated ratings are at such a level now that it's embarrassing to publish them. And in general, lately, the whole internet has been filled with questions from Russians who suddenly started waking up. Well, they started waking up because their alarm clock went off. In many regions, there's this air raid siren. Questions like, what is happening to our country? Today I read, everyone has this feeling that everything has suddenly fallen apart. They're waking up a bit late, but better late than never. The budget deficit for the first quarter exceeded the expected deficit for the entire year. And this, it doesn't really look like a victory. When Putin says everything is going according to plan, Russians say, what plan? 2,500 kilometers from the border with Ukraine, missile danger. What plan? A missile flies full force into a factory 1,000 kilometers away. Putin is afraid of drones. The internet is being shut down in Moscow and St. Petersburg for several days. What's according to plan? And let's move to the Middle East for a bit. Interesting events are happening there too. The US mission announced by Trump to escort ships from the Persian Gulf will not include escorts by the US Navy. The Wall Street Journal is reporting this. So what does this mean in practice? It won't be any kind of military convoy. It will be, well, like it was in the 80s. Meaning tankers won't be sailing under the protection of warships. The ships sail on their own and the US will highlight the route for them, like go there, go here. They'll keep forces nearby saying if anything happens, we'll cover you. And they'll react if something suddenly happens. Like Donald Trump, sail on, it's safe there, sail on. I think the captains and crews on the tankers know perfectly well how to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. They don't know how to make the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps stop shelling them. So what will the US role be then? So Trump will say the strait is open, go ahead, I opened it for you, that's it. They'll get shelled there. So what will the role be? Meanwhile, the White House account posted an image of Donald Trump in the style of Star Wars. As they say, it's not working out with the Strait of Hormuz. I'll go save the galaxy instead. It's about time. Meanwhile, Iran launched ballistic missiles at the United Arab Emirates, hit an oil refinery in the Emirate of Fujairah, and hit a South Korean-flagged tanker 36 miles from Dubai. And it's expected that the US and Israel will launch retaliatory strikes against Iran within the next 24 hours. CNN is reporting on this. Anyway, Donald Trump has already let Iran have it. Iran just made a big mistake, the biggest mistake in its history. Iran will be wiped off the face of the earth if it attacks our ships. And Trump has now characterized the situation with Iran as a mini-war. Basically, it's all starting up again in the Middle East. In Iran, they can't even decide yet who represents Iran at the negotiations. So there's an internal conflict too. Basically, I think it's still a long way from over. Meanwhile, mobile internet has been cut off in Moscow and St. Petersburg. In Moscow, even whitelists aren't working, meaning verified sites that should be accessible. Can you imagine how afraid it is, how terrified it is? Well, the Voronezh authorities also cancelled the May 9th parade, but the drone parade wasn't cancelled. It's strange, by the way, that Putin didn't think of holding some kind of underground parade. And one more piece of news, classically Russian. The Russian government decided to set up surveillance on teenagers online to find those plotting something bad. The Russian authorities decided to focus on preventing negative social phenomena among children and youth, including monitoring the activity of minors to identify those plotting illegal acts. For this, cyber squads and media patrols will be created from loyal and vetted youth. Back to the past. Are they not planning to create some kind of cyber execution squads yet? Basically, Putin is speeding up this rusty locomotive called Russia, which is hurtling right back there, to 1937. Let's hope that it all just collapses like that and falls into some abyss. As for you, take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel, don't forget. And I'm asking you, please, let's help our fighters from the 42nd Brigade. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Our help is very much needed by them right now. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.